unaffected by other card effects. While to the naked eye this line of text looks deceivingly powerful, it's become weaker and weaker with each new set coming out. We would see many iterations of this simple 5-word sentence form onto countless cards, the first of which was Apocryphy 4 Towers, a monster that while was difficult to summon, would be unaffected by spells, traps, and any monster with a lower level than itself. So all level 9 and lower monsters. Being the first of its kind, this 5-word sentence would transform into a label known as Towers, based on the aforementioned Apocryphy 4 Towers. Over time, we've received cards like Blackwing Full Armor Master and the soon to be released The Arrival Cybers adding Nister that shared the same title, but neither of those are viable win conditions as they all shared a similar problem. There was one card, however, that was able to solve this problem and thrive in an actual competitively viable archetype. This card defined what a tower boss monster should be and would go on to be one of the most hated cards of its time. This card was Masterpiece, the True Dracoslaying King, or as many, including myself, have referred to him as Masterpiece, the fun Slaying King. Masterpiece was introduced into the game in Maximum Crisis, which was released at a time where Zoodiac was a tier 0 strategy, and every deck under the sun had to play Zoodiac in some manner, or else their deck wasn't at the same power level and wasn't competitively viable. Maximum Crisis not only gave them new support, but would introduce the True Draco archetype. This archetype gave a whole different spin on what it meant to tribute summon, and instead of having to tribute monsters, you would tribute spells and traps that generated massive card advantage through drawing and destroying your opponent's spells and traps or monsters, and enabled additional normal summons on top of all of this to keep pushing, in addition to one of the best field spells of all time. Clearly these spells and traps were no joke, and the monsters were no pushovers either. Every smaller monster, aka Majesty, Ignis, and Dynamite, all would share the same quality that when your opponent attempted to activate a card or effect, you could chain their effects. Maiden would get you a monster, Dynamite would add a trap from your deck to your hand, and Ignis would do the same except with spells. Well, clearly the deck thrived through its amazing resource generation abilities that also pick apart boards like it's no problem. They, for one reason or another, were given the crux of many people's strategies, that being Masterpiece. This True Draco monster required 2 tributes, compared to all the smaller 1 tribute monsters. The first notable difference between this tower boss monster and others was it wasn't necessarily unaffected by everything. It could tribute monsters, spells, and traps, but because it only requires 2 tributes, you could only gain 2 unaffected properties. For example, if I were to tribute a monster and a spell, Masterpiece would be unaffected from monsters and spells, but it would still be affected by trap cards. While this clearly isn't preferable, it didn't really matter. In most matchups, there will only be 2 ways of dealing with this card regardless, those being through a monster and either a spell or trap depending on the deck. However, regardless of it not being unaffected by everything, this card had a more crucial component to it, that being its removal effect. This effect was absolutely necessary for this card to be viable. By being able to put this card on the field and deal with anything that could potentially threaten it, it would become rather increasingly difficult to deal with Masterpiece. We can now add another layer to this protection through the inherent power of the True Draco archetype. As I've already stated, it can generate massive card advantage, especially when the archetype is able to utilize a card like Card of Demise, as True Draco doesn't need to special summon. This drawing power means you can see your defensive cards rather quickly, and because the deck can break boards as stated so easily in Engine, you could play defensive cards that stun the opponent out of the game rather than playing a card that helps you stop or deal with those boards. The ability to play so many powerful floodgates, especially because your monster effects aren't crucial to winning the game, thus further establish why Masterpiece is an entirely separate beast from other tower boss monsters. Looking at Blackwing Full Armor Master, sure, you can summon multiple of it, but not only are you unable to disrupt the opponent with them, but you invest too many resources to be able to compensate for defensive cards, and something as easily to summon as Borosword Dragon can deal with both of these threats. Now compare that to Masterpiece. Even if they get through every floodgate, you'd still have to deal with the disruption of the fun Slaying King, and such would make it that Borosword Dragon isn't the most effective out. One argument you can technically make against these points is that if Masterpiece was unaffected by everything and had a non-disruptive effect in place of its removal ability, then the card would still be good. But ironically, this isn't the case at all, as we already have that exact monster I just described, that being metaltron 12. This card is literally if Masterpiece was unaffected by everything for the True Draco archetype and can float into a fire, water, wind, or earth extra deck monster if it leaves the field. When Masterpiece was banned, however, and we had the option to switch to using this card, no one took that path and instead just went with the smaller Draco monsters. Metaltron not only required more resources, but wasn't as practical going first or second because of the lack of a removal option, even with the ability to summon from the extra deck. Despite how I'm making this card to be, there are flaws with this card, and similarly to most cards, there are strategies that can deal with this boss monster with ease. One perfect example of an out is a kaiju. Dinosaurs are a great counter to this card. It's as if Beals was perfect to counter Masterpiece. And I mean, even Spiral Resort and Spiral Sleeper inherently power creep the Fun-Slaying King out of the game while they were at the top of the meta. Even though I just mentioned multiple things that made Masterpiece worse in its lifespan, there is a reason this card is banned as of right now. Not only was it stupidly easy to put this card on the field because of the way True Draco is built as a deck, but it could also be difficult for a large number of decks to deal with. Masterpiece deserves the title of the Fun-Slaying King and truly is a one-of-a-kind masterpiece. Okay, maybe it's not as unique as I thought. Before you all go, I have just a few things to talk about. One, thank you all so much for watching this video essay on what separated Masterpiece. I hope you enjoyed. Secondly, I finally launched channel memberships for the channel and relaunched my Patreon, each containing the two same tiers. I have both because I know people will prefer one over the other, and so I wanted to give you all your own option. The Super Saiyan tier grants you a shout out at the end of my videos, and you'll be featured in my end credits along with the exclusive Excalibur Discord tier. The Super Saiyan 2 tier, however, gets you early access to sneak peek clips of future video essays coming out. There will probably be more to come with channel memberships and my Patreon, but for now, this is my starting point. Some shoutouts in this video specifically go to Shep Shao Shep, Carlos Corona, and Ian McNaughton for becoming new members of the channel. Thank you for the incredible support, and I'm looking forward to having you. The third thing is I previously promised videos on Deep Sea and Plunder Patrol. I'll be holding off on the Deep Sea video until it's released, but for the Plunder Patrol video, I'll be having a community tab post within the next few days seeing what you want me to do about that, and whether you'd want a Plunder Patrol video or a different video, for example, a That Grass Looks Greener video. Fourth, I would highly suggest if you're fans of the channel to check out my Discord server. Not only are there amazing people there, not only are there tons of discussions on Yu-Gi-Oh! And other things, but you can also get exclusive perks for being a part of the server. For example, announcements before anybody else, and exclusive deals for being Discord members. For example, I will likely offer discounted tiers in the future through my Discord, but you have to be on the server to find out when those deals happen. Besides all of that, it's an awesome time and I'd love to have you there. Finally, follow me on Twitter, please. Anyways, that'll do it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and with that, I hope to see you soon.